Welcome back to my channel, Famous and Fabulous. The ex-wife of Charlene Harrison was formerly a prisoner of a world that oppressed, where fear stifled the truth, and for many years she was compelled to silence concealing terrible secrets. She was afraid to speak out loud, but now following Rick's startling testimony. The pedestal was broken by the adopted daughter. He had been standing on Charlene's steps for a while, emerging from the shadows with discoveries sufficiently strong to tear apart the what she's about, the perfect mask he wore to. State isn't merely a tale of treachery and offences, it is a warning, a cry shattering the lies and causing lass, the essence of Vegas and requesting the world no longer ignores the city's dazzling neon lights, that Rick Harrison, who never sleeps, used to stand as a representation of the American dream, his dazzling smile and engrossing tales. He turned a simple pawn on porn stars. Invest in a media empire that creates. Viewers think they actually knew who he, but beneath the glamour of celebrity, there was a dreadful gloom that was cautiously concealed behind manipulation and power. Charlene, the former lover, androcided next to Rick and was aware of anyone with whom he was truly in charge. A skilled illusionist who constructed a disguise to hide his transgressions today in a little bistro hidden away from the heart of Las Vegas, dazzling streets across from where she sits, a reporter, her hands shaking but hurstable eyes. For the first time, she relates her experience not to exact retribution, but at last release the truth from its bonds. Rick held it for a long time. In the late 1980s, Charlene first met Rick, back when Vegas was still a goal-oriented city, although it's not quite as spectacular yet. She worked as a waiter today at a tiny Rick. A young man with a lot of dreams was having difficulties with his to construct the gold and silver pawn. Father Charlene was caught away by store Rick's charisma. Feet as soon as he said those words, concerning odd objects in the store with a glitter in his eyes, assuring her of a bright future. Despite their 1990 marriage, Rick's fantastic story fell apart in an instant. Had complete influence over Charlene's life. From her attire to her personality, was permitted to see his unexpected eruptions, left her always tiptoeing and living in fear. About what she said when they got divorced, in Charlene and their son Jake departed in 2005. However, Rick's shadow persisted in haunting her. Charlene has been drinking coffee for years, gaze straying to the window where the lights of Las Vegas continue to shine in the distance. I didn't say anything for too long. She starts out with a steady, low voice. Since I wanted to keep Rick safe, but since I was terrified of what he could harm our son and myself, but when that Rick's adopted daughter arrived, I realized I couldn't continue to hide going forward. She stops and inhales deeply, as though gaining courage to open a difficult. Rick wasn't merely a lousy husband in the past, was a man of danger from the start. I knew right away that he was obsessed. He installed all of the cameras under control, not only in the living room, but throughout the house, but also in our bedroom. When I inquired, he chuckled and told him that it was to keep the family safe. But I noticed him spending hours watching those tapes as he was trying to find a weapon to use against. Charlene leans forward and speaks to me, falling heavily tensely once I discovered a notebook in his workspace. But it wasn't concerning business, and there were many of notes in it regarding me, who I was when I left the house, spoke to him about everything I ate, and he wrote that I required a reminder of loyalty. I felt more like a husband than a wife. She shakes her like a caged beast. Eyes on the head remote, but what really cooled me off was the manner in which he spoke family. Rick always desired this ideal family to boast to the world about his adoption, was wary of the female, but he was never a selfless man who, I believe, only desired. He has the ability to shape someone, entirely regulate, and when I first encountered her at Jake's, the expression in her eyes at the birthday celebration, she appeared to be a ghost and plagued me, constantly observing Rick and Corey as though she was terrified of committing an error. Charlene's fists tense as she speaks. I know I have to speak up because I'm getting sharp. For everyone, not just her, Rick has been dishonest. He is not the heroes. He's a monster dressed as a human on TV. Mask, and I will not allow him to continue concealing the truth. Charlene's eyes went mute, fixed as though it could on the coffee cup protect her from the escalating tide of recollections. Outside the city in car horns, the background was chaotically painted by lights, but the ambience within the tiny bistro was weighty, as if it could blow up at any moment. The reporter across from her had ceased to write. Their breath appeared to be held in suspense. Charlene inhaled deeply. Shaky but unwavering voice. "I've kept some things from everyone, not even me," she said, as though worried that anything she says could betray her Rick. That girl wasn't the first one. "Targeted," Charlene's voice said, falling into a harsh, icy tone. During the years we shared, I began observing that he had unsettling preferences. I heard him once. When I spoke with Corey, he was only back then, teenagers were giggling, concerning, a girl who was employed at the pawn shop regarding how flexible she was. I believed it was merely obscene male banter, but Rick's eyes, they transmitted goosebumps because they weren't typical. She clenched her fists, sending shivers down my spine, nails piercing her hands as though to suppress the trembling. Then I discovered the photographs Rick believed they were secure. I was also unaware of the combination. Weren't your typical pornographic images of young girls, some of whom are still in school clothes, not enough detail to disclose, but the manner in which they were kept, he secured the safe each night, and I realized they weren't innocuous when it challenged him. He snapped and shattered a lamp and yelled that I was having hallucinations. But I always remembered that I couldn't. Charlene raised her head, her eyes blazing, as she was looking down at Rick. When he took that girl under his wing, I attempted to get in touch with a buddy of mine who I was employed with Child Protective Services, had a gut instinct but no proof. However, I pleaded with them to investigate, informed me that Rick was well known and that he'd cleared all the checks. I felt helpless. Then, when the female eventually said anything, I was aware that Rick hadn't merely like a predator, he planned to mistreat her. Her voice was strained as she leaned forward, urgent, but the worst aspect is I once believed that Corey was merely under Rick's impact, but Corey was unaware of it, everything. Once I arrived following the divorce, went get Jake, and discovered Corey by himself, and he glanced at me in the house with the girl, like a warning, like though I couldn't ask questions after hearing someone weep. Upstairs, but the door was blocked by Corey and said that she was simply throwing a fit. Left, but I'm still haunted by that sound. Charlene stopped and her eyes gleamed with. She hastily brushed away her tears. Corey and Rick devised a way to conceal their offenses, cameras, and threats. I'm not sure how much of it was calculated, voicing concerns not only for the girl, but also for all other individuals who might have suffered harm. Rick Harrison does not have a fatherhood. He's a predator, businessman, and I won't Charlene. Let him continue to deceive the world. She drew closer, her voice trailing off, to a spooky murmur, as though terrified. The air may be heard by someone outside. The coffee house felt oppressive all of a sudden. The other customers' muttering subsided, till her eerie voice was all that was left. Across from her, the reporter sat pen with wide eyes, a frozen in the hand, as though confined to Charlene's nightmare. But that's not all. Slowly unfolding, she claimed to have blade-sharp eyes, slicing across the distance between them. Rick's secret is more sinister than anything. I simply revealed a secret to you, discovered only during our divorce. And since then, it has prevented me from falling asleep. I feel like a ghost is holding on to me. Every night, I can hear her screaming in my head. Took a deep breath, as though he were going to jump into a void at the bottom. Her hands were trembling when holding the coffee cup so firmly, causing her knuckles to grow white. In Rick's, there is a basement. Mansion, she went on in a quiet voice, and carefully, consider each word that is picked. Not a sophisticated game room or a wine cellar as one might anticipate in Las Vegas. No, one was permitted to go down there. Even Corey's door wasn't made of wood. or it was made of solid steel and secured with, and Rick alone had the code for the computerized keypad. I was only aware of it because of one instance. As a child, Jake ran down the playing around that door on the stairs. Appeared to be a tomb's entrance. Charlene paused, staring off into atraumatic recollection. Rick emerged from without warning. He pulled Jake back up the steps with a might I had never saw before. His voice was shaking as he screamed at me, with panic, "Don't go near that region. I would never allow him to go down there." I've never seen him that calm, but Jake was filled with a deep, instinctual fear, nearly made contact with something that shouldn't have existed, and I attempted to ask him about it, but he simply gave me a look as if he wanted to eat me, then turn around and leave. He never allowed Jake or me to come close after that. Her hands squeezed in that spot once more. Stiffer nails that are causing her to get red spots palms. Following the divorce, I began hearing gossip. A former worker from someone who was employed by the pawn shop for years, Rick, came to me, trembling, crimson, eyes as if he was fleeing. He said that the basement wasn't only to conceal objects that have been stolen. Rick was never one to appear on Pawn Stars, due to the fact that they were obtained illegally from foreign traffickers. It was even worse. Charlene's voice cracked, shuddering, as though she were crying as she spoke. He claimed that Rick used that to break her heart. Basement, to conceal young women. Declined to assist him. Girls who vanished into thin air I didn't wish to believe it. I made an effort to persuade for me. It was only a nasty gossip. But following the adoption girl's testimony, in court following all indications of Rick's, I was too unwell to ignore it any longer. It's possible that those girls are dead. Leaning back, the journalist's face turned pale, having trouble breathing. But Charlene didn't pause, as though she had already passed through the door. Overwhelming terror, and now only resolve. I used to witness him carrying bulky bags to the basement late at night, assuming that nobody was, observing those bags weren't. Like ordinary luggage, they were weighty, and had sounds as they struck the stairway, as though they held something more than just things. I once had a terrible smell, sharp and metallic, like blood on the way. I asked him from the stairs, attempting to maintain my composure, but he simply laughed, claiming that it was cleaning agents for antiques. However, his eyes were provocative, as though he was aware of my suspicions. Something, but wouldn't risk seeming as though she... Her voice was urgent, as she leaned forward and deary, as though dragging the reporter. That basement wasn't what she had feared. Only a room, yet it used as a jail and a cemetery for Rick's hidden treasures. The antiques he displayed on TV, gold timepieces and antique paintings were down there. That's only the beginning. He concealed cursed objects that no one was expected to be aware of. What I've heard about, unusual figurines made of black stone, featuring symbols that don't come from any known jewelry that was saturated in blood. Items purchased, from traffickers in the swords from the Middle East and antique weapons. Rick said the daggers had seen blood. He wasn't only an abuser in battles, he was a creature that gathers more than simply artifacts. But moreover, Charlene hesitated for a time, in pain. Her panting as though she had just avoided a bad dream, yet her eyes stayed piercingly sharp through the... As a journalist, I lack specific evidence. Not yet, however, I attempted to explain the police, but they didn't think I was real. When Rick was still a Las Vegas celebrity, he possessed wealth, influence, and a group of attorneys prepared to destroy anyone who dared to oppose him. But now that the foster A girl is speaking up against the police's silence, they discovered the iron while investigating that residence. I've heard that they're attempting to shatter the door, the lock. When they open it, they will discover the truth. Her voice was gripped in fists, freezing like a punishment being delivered. Not only does that basement contain stolen artifacts or unlucky girls, include those Rick's spirits demolished. I've witnessed him come back from the pallid face and vacant eyes in a basement as if he had simply confronted the devil directly. He once said something about holding on to. I thought everything was under control, but realized that up to this point, he wasn't only concealing objects or persons. He was concealing his insanity. Charlene gazed directly at the journalist's eyes, I'm aware that burning puts my life at danger. By claiming that Rick has dangerous relationships, that people are willing to make anything to keep him safe. But I can't survive any longer with this haunting. If the entire world's police force opens that door, will view Rick Harrison as not the porn star's hero, is a murderer. Smuggle a monster dressed as a person. And until the truth is exposed, I will not give up, regardless of the Charlene reclined in her chair. Despite her faltering breathing, her eyes never departing the reporter, as though anticipating a response that indicates her disclosure hadn't collapsed into nothingness. The little cafe's atmosphere now felt. Each tiny sound, the clink of a cup on the table and a person's footsteps. The waiter is making things more stressful. Still in shock, the journalist attempted to write, recording every moment, but her hands were shaking. Charlene's penmanship is sloppy, displayed a slight smile that was devoid of happiness, resentfully. You think I'm crazy. Do you not? She asked in a quiet voice, but sharp. I used to believe I was also insane, wondering if it was all in my head, but the clues that are too obvious. I was simply too fearful to confront them. She sipped some, her eyes straying to her now cold coffee. The neon lights in the window of Las Vegas still flickered like false assurances. There were little details that I missed while residing with Rick, but they now arrive, returning as fragments of a terrifying riddle. She kept speaking slowly and softly, as if leading the reporter into a tangle of, for example, the times Rick vanished for several hours without justification. He stated that he was employed at the pawn shop, but one evening I made a call and the employees claimed he wasn't present. Whenever I inquired, he consistently had a deal tail, a unique customer, and an urgent evaluation, but I now know that he wasn't at the store where he was. Charlene leaned forward in the basement, speech growing hurried, as though there was, I recall it being close to the end of 2003. A young girl was employed prior to our divorce. She worked part-time at the pawn business and was named. I believe Emily abruptly left without telling anyone. Why she was usually blonde, and around 18 or 19 Rick said she stepped away while grinning, but I heard a co-worker murmur that she was previously afraid of something. I didn't give disappearance much thought. But I saw Rick a few weeks later, transporting a big luggage to the. I inquired about the basement, and he replied, it was an antique that required special care. Preservation, but his expression toward me, he seemed to be asking me whether I dared. She paused her hands to inquire further, shaky eyes slipping into nothingness. I began to notice further oddities. Rick's clothing have reddish-brown stains. Like the dried blood he said arrived, strange noises from working with antiques like metal rubbing up on stone reverberating from the stairway to the basement, after which I once discovered Attorney, ancient key concealed in the drawer of his desk, didn't appear to be a home. Or when I questioned him about the shop key, he took it away and instructed me not to. I believe that key opened when I touched his belongings. There's something in basement A I don't know, Charlene, so keep a secret chamber protected. Her voice sharpened as she clenched her fists, containing a haunting intensity. I'm not sure how those gals, there were plenty, but Emily wasn't the most. I can only recall one face out of several. Young ladies who were employed at the store or showed up for Rick's activities and then abruptly disappeared. Whenever I asked him, he always had the ideal justification. But now I realize that the basement wasn't just concealing items in a graveyard, where Rick's crimes were buried, and Corey was aware that I had once seen him standing, pallid as a stone in front of the iron, door ghost, as though he had witnessed something. Never forget that she gazed straight at the. Her eyes are burning, journalist. I don't have tangible proof, yet I am aware of the reality. Behind that iron door is the police have begun looking into this, and I've heard that they've already discovered odd indications of chemical odors in the house marks from scratches on the walls. If they will not be able to open that basement. Simply discover dead people or stolen antiques. they will discover evidence that Rick Harrison had two lives, a TV hero and a dark monster. I won't stop, no. Regardless of who I am, the truth has to attend such girls' events for the foster daughter. And the narrative for me of Charlene's shocking disclosures. The Rick Harrison's ex-wife is more than one of criminal activity and a media personality's downfall, but a strong warning about the characteristics of power abuse and the power of the truth from the sinister secrets buried in Charlene's basement at Rick's lengthy stillness. The story conveys significant lessons not only for people, but also for society overall. Out of the spotlight, in the dark, Rick Harrison, also known as a prosperous entrepreneur and a good-looking father figure on Pawn Stars, demonstrates that notoriety and reputation can be constructed upon illusions. This tale serves as a reminder to blindly trust public representations because the reality may be completely different. Praising public personalities without asking them. Questions can make us disregard them. Warning indicators that let individuals like Rickto continue concealing their transgressions. Power and control can protect wicked Rick's financial use, celebrity, and connections to influence and keep everyone around him quiet. Charlene corianed his victims. The underground lair with its robbed artifacts and iron door represents his ability to control not just individuals' lives, as well as the actual truth. This illustrates the idea that power, when, if left unchecked, it can be used as a cover, allowing abuse and ignoring injustice. Silence might exacerbate suffering, but bravery can shatter. Charlene lived in self-doubt and anxiety, remaining silent for years due to fear of Rick and his group. However, the foster, she was impressed by her daughter's courageous revelation to at last speak up. The lesson is the quiet, whether prompted by fear or misplaced allegiance, might shield those who harm others. Conversely, and prolonged suffering, the guts to speak up despite the cycle can be broken by personal risk and fairness. Little indications should never overlook Charlene's recollection of the minor, but unsettling facts about Rick's life. Strange noises, bloody odors, and a frantic look as Jake went up to the basement. These hints were rejected at the time because to fear or a lack of evidence eventually created a horrifying mosaic. We learn from this narrative that odd signs, small things might be crucial in revealing truth. Following our own feelings and making payments, observing odd details could help avoid greater tragedies. Justice takes Charlene's perseverance and solidarity. Testimony wasn't merely a private gesture, was a component of a broader movement that was started by. The tale of Rick's foster daughter demonstrates that justice is not served readily, particularly when facing wealthy individuals with attorneys and harmful networks, but when victims' communities and witnesses unite. Even the most resilient barriers of dishonesty can be broken. No matter how profoundly buried, always manages to escape Rick's basement, full of terrifying secrets, unforgivable stolen artifacts, and bodies. Criminals serve as a metaphor for how truth can be confined. But Charlene thinks when the police open that iron door, everything will be exposed. The finalison is this: no matter how long the truth is hidden, it will eventually surface, especially when there are those brave enough to fight for it.